Get away from him! Jasmine Williams didn't think, didn't calculate. I didn't worry about the consequences. She just ran straight into trouble. 3 seniors towered over a crying boy with Down syndrome. They'd torn his painting, pushed him down, made him bleed, and Jasmine, 17, broke, desperately needing to stay invisible, threw herself between them anyway. 3 against 1? Her voice shook but held firm. Real brave. The lead bully stepped closer. Walk away, scholarship girl. This isn't your problem. But Jasmine helped the boy to his feet instead. Yes, it is. Across the courtyard, a man in an expensive suit watched everything. He pulled out his phone, not to record, but to make a call that would change 2 lives forever. Because what Jasmine didn't know was that sometimes doing the right thing when you have everything to lose is exactly what puts you on the path to gaining everything. For Jasmine, that Tuesday started like every other day for the past 3 years, with impossible choices and the crushing weight of keeping her family alive. 5:30 a.m. The alarm buzzed in their cramped apartment. Jasmine's feet hit cold linoleum, and the first thing she did wasn't check her phone. It was count pills, Ruby's diabetes medication. 3 amber bottles on the kitchen counter. She shook each one, listening to the rattle. 3 days left. Maybe 4 if Grammy took half doses, but the doctor had warned against that. Jasmine opened her worn wallet. $47.50 from Murphy's Diner. The math was brutal and simple. Medicine or groceries. Never both. Hidden in her AP chemistry textbook was the envelope that haunted her dreams. Stanford University. Acceptance letter. Full tuition required. Deadline. 6 weeks away. Every morning she stared at that letter. Should she tell Grammy? The joy would light up Ruby's tired eyes, but then what? When reality crashed down and they realized dreams cost money they'd never have? Morning, baby. Ruby's voice drifted from the bedroom, followed by that cough that was getting worse. How are you feeling, Grammy? Don't worry about this old woman. You focus on your studies. But worry was all Jasmine knew how to do, because Ruby Williams had sacrificed everything to raise her after the car accident that killed Jasmine's parents. Grammy had been a teacher then, with her own house and retirement savings, all gone now, sold piece by piece to keep them breathing. The walk to school saved $2.50 on bus fare. Every dollar mattered. Jasmine passed through Riverside, mansion driveways, luxury cars worth more than they'd see in 5 years. The contrast burned, but she pushed the jealousy down. Jealousy didn't pay for medicine. At Jefferson High, she was the quiet, smart one who works too hard. Teachers liked her. Students respected her from a distance. Being poor in a school where kids drove BMWs created its own isolation. AP Chemistry, front row. Jasmine took notes with a pencil worn to barely an inch. Around her, classmates complained about buying lab supplies. $60 for beakers alone, Madison Price whined. Madison, who wore different designer shoes every day. Madison, who didn't know $60 meant 8 hours of slinging hash and cleaning tables. Mrs. Peterson caught Jasmine after class. I have scholarship applications. Community service helps, but you'd need 40 hours by Christmas. 40 hours. 5 full shifts at the diner, $160, 2 weeks of Grammy's medication. I'll think about it. But thinking was all she could afford. Her phone buzzed. Murphy's Diner. Can you cover Sarah's shift tonight? We're slammed. Another text from Grammy. Feeling dizzy again, baby. Don't worry about me. Jasmine's hands shook, typing back. I'll be there. The weight crushed her chest. Extra shifts meant medicine money, but failing chemistry meant losing Stanford. She was drowning in choices where every option sacrificed something vital. Lunch period. Jasmine sat alone in the courtyard, head in hands. Around her, normal teenagers worried about normal things. Weekend plans, college visits, spring break trips, problems she would have killed to have. The Stanford letter burned in her backpack. Full ride or nothing, no middle ground for people like her. She pulled out her phone and calculated again. If she worked every possible shift, skipped meals, stretched Grammy's medicine dangerously thin, maybe, just maybe, but what if the Grammy got sicker? What if the diner laid her off? What if? Jasmine closed her eyes and tried to imagine a world where being smart was enough, working hard guaranteed success, where she didn't have to choose between her future and Grammy's life. The Stanford application deadline stared at her from her calendar. December 1st. 43 days to find miracle money that didn't exist. She thought about Mrs. Peterson's scholarship applications, 40 hours of community service. When? Between double shifts and homework and taking care of Grammy? When did poor kids find time to volunteer when survival took every waking moment? Rich kids had time for community service. Rich kids' parents wrote checks for lab supplies. Rich kids didn't count pills every morning or calculate whether they could afford lunch. But Jasmine pushed the bitterness down. Grammy had taught her that being poor wasn't an excuse for being bitter. We may not have much, baby, but we have each other, and we have our values. No one can take those away. Values. I like helping people. Like doing what's right even when it hurts. Jasmine pulled out her chemistry homework, trying to focus on molecular bonds while her stomach growled. She'd skipped breakfast to save money, but her brain needed fuel to function. That's when the shouting started. Loud voices, cruel laughter, the sound of someone crying. Jasmine looked up to see 3 seniors surrounding a smaller boy. The boy was on the ground, tears streaming down his face. His painting lay in a puddle, colors bleeding together like watercolor tears. Every logical thought screamed at her to look away. She couldn't afford trouble, couldn't risk her job, her grades, her future. Grammy needed her to stay invisible, stay safe, stay focused. But the boy's sobs cut through every logical argument. And Jasmine Williams dropped her homework and ran straight into the fight she couldn't afford to have. But Jasmine's private struggle was about to collide with someone else's nightmare, one that would force her to choose between survival and soul. Tommy Harrison clutched his canvas like a lifeline. The painting showed stick figures holding hands under a rainbow, weeks of careful work with his tongue poking out in concentration. "Dad's gonna love this," he whispered, practicing words for when his father picked him up. Tommy had autism and Down syndrome, but his heart was pure joy wrapped in a 14-year-old body. That's when Derek Collins spotted him. Derek had everything Jefferson High worshipped. 6'3" quarterback, college scouts calling, parents who donated buildings. His shadow fell across Tommy like a storm cloud. "Look what we have here." Derek's voice carried across the courtyard. Little Tommy and his finger paintings. Kyle Turner appeared with his phone ready. Derek's personal documentarian, capturing every legendary moment of senior year. Madison Price completed their trinity, prom queen beautiful with a heart made of ice. Tommy's shoulders hunched. He tried walking faster, but Derek's stride caught up easily. "Where are you going, buddy?" Derek stepped into Tommy's path. "We just want to see your artwork." "Please leave me alone." Tommy's voice barely whispered. "My dad is coming." Madison's laugh cut like broken glass. "Oh, this is precious. Did you use your feet? It would explain the quality." Kyle raised his phone. "This is going viral. #Jefferson High Art." Tommy's breathing quickened. The warning signs Jasmine recognized from caring for Grammy during panic attacks. Hands starting to flap. "My body is beginning to rock. The world is becoming too much, too fast, too cruel. Please stop," Tommy begged. Derek mimicked Tommy's movements, turning them into a cruel puppet show. "Look, guys, he's glitching. Maybe we need tech support." Students slowed as they passed. Some filmed, others whispered. But walking by was easier than getting involved. Safer. Smarter. Madison reached for the painting. "Let me see this masterpiece." "No!" Tommy pulled back, but Madison's nails caught the edge. "Rip!" The sound of tearing canvas echoed across the courtyard like a scream. Tommy stared at his destroyed work. Weeks of love reduced to broken pieces. The stick figures still held hands, but their rainbow was bleeding. Oops. Madison's innocence was poison sweet. Butterfingers. Maybe this teaches you to stay with your own kind. Derek decided to finish what they'd started. He pushed Tommy, not hard enough to seriously injure, but enough to send him stumbling backward. Tommy's hands scraped concrete as he fell. The painting flew from his grip, landing in yesterday's puddle. Colors bled together like watercolor tears. Tommy sat in the wet courtyard staring at his ruined art. Then the sobs started. Deep, heartbroken sounds that cut through every conversation, every laugh, every cruel whisper. Kyle kept recording. "This is gold, pure gold." Derek stood over Tommy like a conqueror. "Maybe next time you'll remember where you belong." The courtyard emptied as students headed to class. Security cameras pointed the wrong direction. No teachers in sight. Just Tommy, 3 monsters, and phones capturing his destruction for entertainment. From the visitor parking area, David Harrison walked toward the main building, early for his meeting with Tommy's teacher. Planning to surprise his son, maybe grab ice cream after school. Instead, he found himself frozen, watching his child being systematically destroyed. David's instinct screamed to charge across the courtyard, use his adult authority, stop this nightmare immediately. But something held him back, maybe the way other students just watched, maybe realizing this probably wasn't the first time. His hands clenched as Tommy rocked back and forth, completely overwhelmed and shutting down. This was his baby. His heart was walking around outside his body, and these children were tearing that heart to pieces for fun. But then movement caught his eye. Across the courtyard, a slender black girl dropped her backpack and started running toward the confrontation. She was smaller than any of the bullies, just a kid herself. But the determination on her face was fierce as lightning. David held his breath. Jasmine's mind screamed warnings as her feet carried her forward. Every rational thought told her to stop. These weren't random students. Derek's dad was on the school board. Madison's family donated everything. Kyle's parents were lawyers who ate scholarship kids for breakfast. Getting involved meant making enemies she couldn't afford, meant risking her job if they complained, meant possibly losing Stanford if this went on her record. But Tommy's broken sobs drowned out every logical argument. She thought of Grammy's voice. "Baby, we don't turn away when someone needs help. That's not who we are." Even if helping destroyed everything they'd worked for. Even if doing right meant losing everything that mattered. Jasmine reached the group breathless, her heart hammering. She positioned herself between Tommy and his tormentors, knowing she was about to start a war she couldn't win. But some fights were worth having anyway. What happened next would be caught on multiple phones, but no one recording understood they were witnessing a moment that would change everything. "Get away from him!" Jasmine's voice cut through the courtyard like a whip. She arrived breathless, positioning herself between Tommy and his tormentors. Her hands shook, but her stance was solid steel. Derek turned, genuinely shocked. He knew Jasmine by reputation, the scholarship kid who kept her head down. Seeing her challenge him was like watching a sparrow attack eagles. "Oh, look." Derek's amusement was sharp. "We got ourselves a hero. Mind your business, scholarship girl." But Jasmine was already kneeling beside Tommy, her voice transforming from fierce to gentle. "Hey, sweetie, you're okay now? What's your name?" Tommy looked up through tears, still overwhelmed but responding to kindness. "Tommy, they destroyed my painting for my dad." "Tommy's a beautiful name." Jasmine helped him stand, noting scraped palms and torn clothes. Around them, the circle of phone cameras grew wider. Whatever happened next would be online before lunch ended. She turned to face Derek, steel returning to her voice. 3 against 1? Real impressive. You feel proud making a kid cry?" Madison stepped forward, her cheerleader smiling razor sharp. "He shouldn't be in regular school if he can't handle normal kids." The words hit Jasmine like physical blows. She thought of Grammy fighting for decades to include special needs students. Grammy spent her own money on supplies for kids everyone else wrote off. He has every right to be here. Anger flared in Jasmine's chest. More right than you, since he's not the one making people feel small to feel big. Derek loomed closer, using his 6'3" frame to intimidate her 5'4". "You want to end up like your little friend?" Kyle circled with his camera, hunting angles. "This is perfect. Ghetto girl thinks she's a superhero." But Jasmine didn't back down. If anything, she stepped closer to Derek, chin raised. "Try me, but know that when you do, everyone watching will see exactly who you really are." The courtyard held its breath. Derek's hand twitched toward Jasmine's arm, but something in her eyes made him hesitate. Maybe the absolute fearlessness, maybe the growing crowd of witnesses. Or maybe the way she positioned herself protectively in front of Tommy, like she'd die before letting anyone hurt him again. "You're not worth our time," Derek said, trying to save face. "Good." Jasmine's voice was granite. "Because Tommy and I have somewhere to be." She put her arm gently around Tommy's shoulders. "Can you walk? Let's get you safe." Tommy nodded, still sniffling but calmer. As they started toward the building, Derek called after them, "This isn't over, scholarship girl!" Without turning, Jasmine called back, "Yes, it is." A few younger students started clapping. Someone shouted, "Leave them alone!" The crowd's energy shifted, and Derek felt it slipping away. "Whatever," he motioned to his crew. "This is stupid anyway." As the bullies retreated, Jasmine walked Tommy toward safety, her arm still protective around his shoulders. She could feel him trembling, the adrenaline crash hitting them both. "You're safe now," she whispered. "I promise." Tommy looked up with wonder. "Why did you help me? You don't even know me." Jasmine thought of Grammy's voice echoing through years of lessons. "Because it was right, and because you seem pretty amazing." They reached a bench near the main entrance. Jasmine sat with Tommy, watching his breathing return to normal. Students passed by, some offering supportive smiles, others just staring. "My painting," Tommy said sadly, looking back toward the puddle where his art lay ruined. "Maybe we can fix it," Jasmine offered. "I'm decent with art. Would you like that?" Tommy's face lit up, the first genuine smile since the nightmare began. "You'd do that? For me?" "Of course." What Jasmine didn't know was that David Harrison had witnessed every moment from the visitor parking area, every word, every gesture, her fearlessness facing 3 larger opponents, her instant gentleness with Tommy, her refusal to back down even when outnumbered. David's hands had trembled watching his son being tormented. Now they shook for different reasons. He'd just witnessed something extraordinary, a teenager with everything to lose choosing to risk it all for a stranger. He pulled out his phone. "Sarah, cancel my 11 a.m. Something important just happened, something that changes everything." Tommy squeezed Jasmine's hand. "Are you really going to help me fix my painting?" "We'll make it even better than before," Jasmine promised. "What was it about?" "Friendship," Tommy said. "All different kids holding hands under a rainbow. My dad says the world needs more friendship." Jasmine smiled, the first real smile she'd managed in weeks. "Your dad sounds smart." "He is. He helps lots of people through his work. He says helping people is the best job in the world." "What kind of work does he do?" "Something with money in schools and making dreams come true," Tommy said. "I don't understand all of it, but he makes kids happy, like you made me happy." Students streamed past them toward afternoon classes. Some waved at Tommy, who waved back enthusiastically. Others nodded respectfully at Jasmine. Word was already spreading about what had happened. "I should probably get you to your teacher," Jasmine said reluctantly. She was already 20 minutes late for chemistry, which meant detention, which meant missing work at Murphy's Diner. But looking at Tommy's peaceful face, she knew she'd make the same choice again. Some things mattered more than money. Some things mattered more than grades. Some things were worth any sacrifice. "Thank you, Jasmine," Tommy said as they stood. "You're my hero." "You're pretty heroic yourself," she replied. "It takes courage to keep being kind when people are cruel." As they walked toward the special education wing, neither of them noticed the well-dressed man approaching from across the courtyard. David Harrison had been watching long enough. Now it was time to meet the girl who'd saved his son, and to discover a connection that would change both their families forever. But first, he needed to understand exactly who Jasmine Williams was, and why her act of courage felt like the answer to a 15-year-old prayer. As Jasmine walked Tommy toward the special education classroom, she had no idea that her simple act of courage had just set extraordinary wheels in motion across town, and that the hardest part of her day was just beginning. Mrs. Martinez looked up from organizing art supplies as they entered. Her warm smile faded instantly when she saw Tommy's tear-stained face and scraped hands. "Tommy, what happened, honey? And where's your beautiful painting?" Tommy's words tumbled out in an excited rush. "Some big kids were really mean to me, but Jasmine saved me. She's my hero. They ripped my painting, but she's going to help me fix it." Mrs. Martinez knelt to examine Tommy's palms while looking gratefully at Jasmine. "Thank you so much for helping him. Tommy is precious to all of us here." "He's a special kid," Jasmine said softly. "Nobody deserves to be treated like that." Mrs. Martinez cleaned Tommy's scrapes with practiced gentleness. "I'd love to write you a recommendation letter for college applications. What you did shows real character." Before Jasmine could respond, a voice spoke from the doorway. "Excuse me, miss." Jasmine turned to see a well-dressed man in an expensive suit. Her stomach dropped instantly. Was she in trouble? Had the bullies twisted the story, made her the aggressor? "I saw what happened in the courtyard," David said carefully. Jasmine tensed, preparing for accusations or punishment. "I was just helping. Tommy didn't deserve what they were doing." David stepped into the classroom, his eyes moving between Jasmine and Tommy with an expression she couldn't read. "You were absolutely incredible. Truly. I'd like to do something to thank you." He reached for his wallet, and Jasmine's heart sank. This was exactly what she'd feared, being seen as someone who helped people for money, for reward, for anything other than being right. David began counting out $100 bills. "Please take this. What you did for that boy. There should be some recognition for courage like that." Jasmine stepped back, her hands raised defensively. "I can't take money for doing the right thing." "But surely there's something you need," David pressed gently. "College expenses, family medical bills, car repairs." The questions hit devastatingly close to home. Jasmine thought of Grammy's nearly empty medicine bottles sitting on their kitchen counter, of the Stanford acceptance letter hidden in her textbook, requiring money they'd never have, of working double shifts just to keep their heads barely above water. For one tempting moment, she wavered. This stranger was offering enough money to solve her immediate problems. Maybe Grammy's medication for months, maybe even a chance to actually visit Stanford to see if her dreams could become reality. But Grammy's voice echoed through her memory, clear as yesterday. "Baby, we don't take charity. We work for what we have, and we help others because it's right, not because we expect something back." "Thank you, but no," Jasmine said firmly, despite the part of her screaming to take the money. "Tommy's safe now. That's all that matters." David stared at her with something approaching wonder. In his business world, everyone had a price. Everyone wanted something. But this teenager was turning down money she clearly needed, simply because accepting it felt wrong to her. "At least let me give you my card," he said, pulling out a simple white business card. "If you ever need anything at all, please don't hesitate to call." Jasmine took the card politely, glancing at it briefly. "D. Harrison, private investment." She slipped it into her pocket without much thought. Just another adult trying to be kind after a difficult situation. "Thank you, Mr. Harrison, Mr." "That's very thoughtful." David watched her prepare to leave, then turned to Tommy. "How are you feeling, buddy?" "Perfect now," Tommy beamed. "Jasmine's gonna help me make my painting even better." As Jasmine headed for the door, David called after her. "Miss, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name." "Jasmine Williams." Something flickered across David's face. A flash of recognition, surprise, something deeper. But it happened so quickly that Jasmine missed it entirely, already worried about being late to her next class. "Thank you, Jasmine Williams. More than you could possibly know." Jasmine hurried toward chemistry class, already 25 minutes late. Mr. Rodriguez gave her detention without listening to her explanation. Detention meant missing her evening shift at Murphy's Diner. Missing that shift meant losing $32 her family desperately needed. As she sat through the chemistry lesson she'd already missed half of, Jasmine pulled out David's business card and stared at it. $32 would buy Grammy's medicine for 3 more days. She put the card away. Grammy hadn't raised her to take handouts, no matter how badly they needed help. What she didn't know was that David Harrison was already making phone calls that would change everything. While Jasmine sat through detention, calculating lost wages and worrying about Grammy's medicine, David Harrison was making phone calls that would reveal connections spanning generations and change everything. David sat in his car in Jefferson High's parking lot, staring at his phone. Instead of heading to his next business meeting, he dialed his assistant. "Sarah, clear my afternoon. I need you to pull some files." "Of course, Mr. Harrison. Regarding Tommy's incident?" David paused, watching students move between buildings through his windshield. "Partly. But I need you to research something else. Pull everything we have on Ruby Williams, about 15 years back." Silence on the other end. Sarah had managed David's files for 8 years. She knew every name that mattered. "Sir, may I ask why?" "Not yet," David said quietly. "But Sarah?" Also contact Stanford University's admissions office. I need a meeting tonight, if possible. Are we expanding scholarship programs? David looked at the simple business card, identical to hundreds he'd handed out. Jasmine had barely glanced at it before tucking it away. Just another adult being polite after trouble, if she only knew. Something like that. And Sarah? Handle this quietly. Family connections, employment history, current address. Everything on Ruby Williams. Meanwhile, Jasmine endured her chemistry detention, watching precious daylight fade outside. Every minute here was money not earned, medicine not bought, future slipping further away. When detention ended, she rushed to Murphy's Diner, hoping for a partial shift. The restaurant buzzed with dinner rush chaos. "Jasmine," Joe called from behind the grill. "Thank God. We're drowning here." She tied her apron, grateful despite exhaustion. As she served plates and took orders, her mind kept drifting to Tommy's grateful smile, Derek's cruel laughter, the mysterious businessman who'd offered money she couldn't accept. That evening, Grammy waited with news. Good. Her doctor found new medication options. Bad. Insurance would cover even less. "Don't worry about me, baby," Ruby said, but fear flickered in her tired eyes. Jasmine pulled David's business card from her pocket, studying it under her desk lamp. What kind of private investment company gave cards to random high school students? She was about to discover some questions that answered themselves in the most unexpected ways. Across town, David stared at a manila folder Sarah had delivered. Inside, newspaper clippings, hospital records, and one photograph that made his hands tremble. A younger Ruby Williams in a torn nurse's uniform, holding a 6-month-old baby beside an ambulance. Behind her, paramedics loaded an unconscious man. The headline read, "Local nurse saves CEO and infant son in mountain crash." David touched the photo gently. 15 years of searching. 15 years of carrying unpaid gratitude. And now Ruby Williams' granddaughter had saved his son again. He picked up his phone and dialed Stanford University. "This is David Harrison. I understand you have a student named Jasmine Williams who's been accepted but needs financial assistance." "Yes, sir. Outstanding candidate, but—" "Whatever she needs," David interrupted. "Full ride, living expenses, everything. Bill the Harrison Foundation." "Sir, that's very generous, but shouldn't we verify?" "The verification happened today," David said, looking at Tommy's artwork hanging on his office wall. "Some debts take 15 years to repay. This one starts tomorrow." What David didn't know was that the biggest revelation was still coming. The next morning brought news that would connect 3 generations and reveal a debt 15 years in the making. One that would explain why a simple business card was about to become the key to everything. Jasmine arrived at school to find Tommy waiting by her locker, practically vibrating with excitement. He held a carefully wrapped package in his small hands. "Jasmine, I finished it! Mrs. Martinez helped me stay after school and we fixed my painting." He unwrapped the canvas with ceremonial care. The original friendship painting was there, but transformed. Now it included a new figure, a girl with dark skin and a determined expression, standing protectively in front of the other children, arms spread wide like a shield. "That's you!" Tommy announced proudly. "You're the superhero in my painting now." Jasmine felt tears prick her eyes. "Tommy, this is absolutely beautiful. Your dad is gonna love it. He's coming to see it today." Tommy could barely contain his joy. "He wants to meet you too. He said you're very, very special." "I'm not special," Jasmine said softly. "I just did what anyone should do." Tommy shook his head with the absolute certainty only children possess. "That's exactly what makes you special. Dad says special people never think they're special." Across town, David Harrison sat in his office conference room, staring at documents that would rewrite everything he thought he knew about coincidence. The newspaper clipping was 15 years old, edges yellowed with time. "Local nurse saves CEO's family in mountain crash." The black and white photograph showed Ruby Williams, her nurse's uniform torn and bloodied, standing beside an ambulance. In her arms was a baby, Tommy, barely 6 months old. Behind her, paramedics loaded an unconscious man onto a stretcher. David remembered that night like it was yesterday. Ice storm coating the mountain highway. His car skidded into the ravine. The smell of gasoline. Tommy's terrified cries from his car seat. And then Ruby Williams, appearing through the storm like an angel, pulling them both from the wreckage seconds before the car exploded in flames. He read Ruby's quoted words again. "I just did what anyone would do. I'm a nurse. I help people. That's what we're supposed to do." She'd refused any reward then, just like her granddaughter had yesterday. She'd disappeared before David could properly thank her, leaving only a first name and the knowledge that she'd given him and Tommy their lives. For 15 years he'd searched. Private investigators combed hospital records. Nothing. Ruby Williams had vanished like smoke, leaving David with unpaid gratitude that grew heavier each year, until yesterday, when a teenage girl with the same last name, the same moral courage, the same humble refusal of rewards had saved Tommy all over again. David's assistant knocked softly. "Sir, Tommy's school called. They're ready for the art presentation." David looked at his son's latest masterpiece hanging on his office wall, a painting of him and Tommy holding hands under a rainbow with "Daddy's Love" written in careful, shaky letters across the top. "Cancel everything else today, Sarah. This is more important than any business meeting." At Jefferson High, Tommy was setting up his display in the main hallway, chattering excitedly to anyone who would listen about his superhero friend Jasmine. Mrs. Martinez helped position the painting on the easel. "Your father will be so proud, Tommy, and proud of how brave you were yesterday." "Jasmine made me brave," Tommy said simply. "She showed me that good people protect each other." When David arrived, he paused in the hallway to study Tommy's painting. There was his son depicted with loving detail. And there was Jasmine, arms outstretched protectively, her painted face somehow capturing the gentle strength he'd witnessed in person. Principal Watson approached. "Mr. Harrison, we have Miss Williams waiting in the conference room as requested." David nodded, his heart beating faster than it had in years. 15 years of searching, 15 years of carrying impossible gratitude. And now, by the strangest twist of fate, Ruby Williams' granddaughter had completed what her grandmother started. When Jasmine entered the conference room, she looked nervous and confused. "Mrs. Watson said you wanted to speak with me? Am I in some kind of trouble?" David gestured for her to sit, his voice gentle. "Jasmine, I need to ask you something very important. Your grandmother, is her name Ruby Williams?" Jasmine's eyebrows furrowed in confusion. "Yes, how did you possibly know that?" David's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Because she saved my life, and Tommy's life, 15 years ago." The room went completely silent. Jasmine stared at him, her young mind struggling to process what she was hearing. "There was a car accident," David continued, emotion thick in his voice. "Terrible ice storm on the mountain road. Our car went into a ravine. If your grandmother hadn't pulled us out before the car caught fire..." He paused, overwhelmed. "Tommy and I wouldn't be sitting here today." Jasmine's eyes widened as the magnitude hit her. "Grammy never told me. She mentioned once that she helped some people in an accident, but she never said anything about..." "She refused any reward," David said. "Disappeared before I could properly thank her. I've been looking for her for 15 years, Jasmine. 15 years. Tommy, who had been quietly listening from the doorway, suddenly spoke up with perfect childlike clarity. "So Jasmine's family really are superheroes, just like in my painting." David smiled through tears he didn't try to hide. "Your grandmother gave me my son, Jasmine. She gave me the chance to become the father Tommy needed. And yesterday, you gave me the gift of watching him grow up safe and confident and protected." The parallel was impossible, beautiful, overwhelming. Ruby had saved David and baby Tommy from physical death. Jasmine had saved Tommy from the emotional wounds that could have scarred him forever. "I don't understand what this means," Jasmine said softly. David reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick envelope, his hands steady now with absolute certainty. "It means some debts can only be repaid across generations, Jasmine. It means your family's story with mine has been 15 years in the making. And it means I'm not taking no for an answer this time." That envelope contained more than money. It held the key to a future Jasmine never dared imagine, and the completion of a circle that had been 15 years in the making. "Before you open that," David said gently, "I need you to understand what your grandmother meant to my family, and what you mean to us now." Jasmine's hands trembled as she held the sealed envelope. "Mr. Harrison, I still don't understand what's happening here." 15 years ago, I wasn't just a businessman, Jasmine. I was a broken man. Tommy's mother died during childbirth, and I was drowning in grief and the terror of raising a special needs child alone. David's voice grew quiet with memory. That night on the mountain, I wasn't just driving home. I was running away from everything, from responsibility, from Tommy, from life itself. David looked at his son, who was listening with wide, understanding eyes. If your grandmother hadn't been driving home from her night shift at the hospital, if she hadn't seen our car in the ravine, if she hadn't risked her own life to pull us out. He paused, overwhelmed. Tommy would have grown up without a father. I would have died before I learned how to be the parent he deserved. Tommy came over and took his father's hand. Grandma Ruby saved us so we could become a real family. Exactly right, David said, squeezing Tommy's fingers. And yesterday, Jasmine completed what her grandmother started. She didn't just save you from those bullies, Tommy. She saved you from believing that the world was a cruel place where no one would stand up for you. Jasmine felt overwhelmed by the weight of it all. But I really just did what anyone should do. No, David said firmly. What you did was extraordinary. You risked your reputation, your safety, your future. Because I know about Stanford, Jasmine. I know about your grandmother's medical expenses. I know you work double shifts just to afford her diabetes medication. Jasmine's cheeks burned with embarrassment. How could you possibly know? Because I've spent 15 years creating the Harrison Foundation specifically to help families like yours. When I couldn't find your grandmother to repay her directly, I decided to help other people instead, but I never stopped searching for her. He gestured toward the envelope. Please, open it. With trembling fingers, Jasmine broke the seal. Inside was official letterhead from Stanford University, but not the financial aid rejection she'd expected. At the top, in bold letters, Full Scholarship Award, Harrison Foundation. Below that, a cashier's check for $50,000, and at the bottom, a handwritten note. Mrs. Williams, 15 years ago you gave me and my son a second chance at life. Please let me give Jasmine hers. David Harrison. Jasmine stared at the papers, her brain refusing to process the numbers. They seemed impossible. Fictional. A dream that would dissolve if she blinked too hard. This can't be real, she whispered finally. This is too much. I can't possibly accept this. It's not charity, David said. It's a debt I should have paid years ago, plus 15 years of compound interest. Tommy bounced excitedly. Does this mean Jasmine can go to college and Grandma Ruby won't have to worry about being sick anymore? That's exactly what it means, David confirmed. Full tuition, room and board through graduate school if she wants it. Complete medical insurance for your grandmother, monthly living stipend, everything. Jasmine looked up, tears streaming down her face. But why? Why would you do something this enormous? Because your family taught me what grace looks like. Your grandmother could have driven past that accident 15 years ago. It was late. It was dangerous. She just finished a 12-hour shift. You could have walked past Tommy yesterday. You had everything to lose and nothing to gain, but neither of you did. David leaned forward intently. But this isn't just about the past, Jasmine. It's about the future. After college, I want you to come work for the Harrison Foundation. We identify and support young people like you, those who demonstrate moral courage when it matters most. What would I actually do? Help us find more students like yourself. Create programs that teach empathy and bravery. Help me solve something I've never been able to figure out on my own. What's that? How to identify character before it's tested in a crisis. How to spot the next Ruby Williams, the next Jasmine Williams, before they prove themselves through fire. Tommy suddenly spoke up with his characteristic directness. Can I help too? I want to tell other different kids that it's okay to be different, and that there are heroes who will protect them. David smiled. That's exactly what we need, buddy. Your voice, your story, your art. That's how we change hearts and minds. Jasmine looked at the scholarship letter again, then at the check. $50,000. More money than her family had ever dreamed of seeing. Enough to secure Grammy's medicine for years. Enough to stop the constant worry, the daily calculations, the impossible choices. There's one more thing, David said. I'm establishing the Ruby Williams Scholarship Program at Jefferson High. It will support students who demonstrate moral courage, regardless of their academic performance or financial need. You're naming it after the Grammy? She's the one who taught my family that real wealth isn't measured in bank accounts. It's measured in how we treat each other when nobody's watching and nothing's expected in return. Jasmine felt the weight of infinite possibility settling around her like sunlight. College, a future, Grammy's health secured. But more than that, the chance to help other kids like Tommy, other families like her own. "Mr. Harrison," she said finally, "I accept your offer, but I have conditions too." David raised an eyebrow, genuinely amused. "Name them." "First, Tommy gets to help design every anti-bullying program we create. His voice matters more than any adult expert. Second, part of my internship involves coming back to Jefferson High regularly to mentor students. And third, Grammy gets consulted on every scholarship decision. She understands character better than anyone I've ever met." David extended his hand with a smile that reached his eyes. "Deal. Welcome to the Harrison Foundation family, Jasmine Williams." As they shook hands, Tommy clapped and bounced with pure joy. "We're all superheroes now, just like in my painting." And for the first time in her 17 years, Jasmine Williams believed that maybe dreams really could come true. 6 months later, the ripple effects of one moment of courage had transformed an entire community, proving that when ordinary people choose to act, the world shifts in ways no one can predict. Stanford University's freshman orientation buzzed with nervous energy as hundreds of new students found their dorms. In Wilbur Hall, room 237, Jasmine Williams hung the last photo on her wall, her and Tommy at his latest art show, both grinning widely. Her roommate Ashley looked at the picture curiously. "Is that your little brother?" "Something like that," Jasmine smiled. "He taught me that courage isn't about not being scared, it's about doing what's right anyway." At Stanford, Jasmine wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. When her organic chemistry study group struggled with complex reactions, she stayed late explaining molecular bonds. When her roommate broke down over homesickness, Jasmine listened for hours, offering tissues and wisdom beyond her 18 years. "You have this gift for making people feel heard," her resident advisor Marcus told her. "Have you considered peer counseling certification?" Back home, Ruby Williams sat in her new apartment. A sunny 2-bedroom with grab bars, accessible features, and a medical alert system she'd never needed to use. Her weekly doctor visits were no longer sources of financial terror. Her medication arrived in full bottles, taken on schedule, with no dangerous rationing. But the biggest change wasn't the apartment or health care, it was for a purpose. "Mrs. Williams," Principal Watson said during one of Ruby's weekly visits to Jefferson High, "we've had 23 students apply for the Ruby Williams Scholarship this semester. 23 kids who want to make a difference." Ruby reviewed applications in the school's conference room, the same room where David had revealed his connection to Jasmine. Each application told a story of small heroism. A student who'd started a lunch program for homeless classmates, another who'd created peer tutoring for kids with learning disabilities. "This one," Ruby said, pointing to Maya Rodriguez's application. "She stopped some seniors from bullying a boy with autism. Says here she remembered Tommy's assembly about standing up for others." At Jefferson High, Tommy Harrison had become the school's most beloved ambassador. Every month he spoke to different classes about acceptance and friendship. His artwork decorated the main hallway, 12 paintings showing acts of kindness in brilliant colors. "The coolest thing about being different," Tommy told a group of nervous 7th graders, "is that it makes you notice other people who are different too, and those people usually need friends the most." After his presentation, a shy girl approached. "Tommy, some kids at lunch make fun of this boy who stutters. What should I do?" Tommy's response came without hesitation. "Be like Jasmine. Stand up and say that's not okay. Then sit with him and ask about something he likes. Friendship fixes almost everything." The girl nodded seriously and walked away with new determination. Derek Collins was completing his final community service hours at a special needs center. Losing his athletic scholarship had initially filled him with rage, but working with disabled children had slowly transformed something fundamental inside him. "Derek," his supervisor, Mrs. Carter, said, "I've never seen such change in a volunteer. Have you considered studying special education?" Derek looked across the room where he was helping a boy with Down syndrome complete a puzzle. 6 months ago, he would have laughed at the suggestion. Now he was researching college programs. The Harrison Foundation had exploded beyond David's wildest dreams. Applications flooded in from schools across 8 states. Corporate partnerships formed with companies wanting to support character-based education. Major news outlets featured the Tommy and Jasmine effect, measurable decreases in bullying incidents at participating schools. At the Foundation's quarterly board meeting, David presented stunning statistics. Bullying incidents down 42% across participating schools, peer intervention up 68%. But here's the number that matters most. 94% of students now report believing someone would stand up for them if they were in trouble. Sarah added, "We've created waiting lists for schools wanting the program. Demand is overwhelming." The most profound change happened around David's dinner table. Sunday meals now included Ruby, who'd become Tommy's adopted grandmother and David's trusted advisor on all Foundation decisions. "You know what I love most about this whole journey?" Ruby said one evening, watching Tommy and Jasmine collaborate on a new painting via video call. "What's that?" David asked. "These children think they're learning about courage and kindness. But really, they're just learning to see each other as human beings. That's all it ever took." The ripple effects continued spreading outward. One choice, one moment of courage, one act of kindness at a time, proving that ordinary people really could create extraordinary change. And somewhere in classrooms across the country, other shy kids were finding their courage, inspired by a girl who'd simply refused to walk away when someone needed help. 2 years later, as Jasmine prepared for her junior year at Stanford, a familiar scene was about to unfold at Jefferson High, proving that courage, once sparked, becomes a flame that never dies. Maya Rodriguez walked through Jefferson High's courtyard on the first day of her senior year, her backpack heavy with AP textbooks and college application materials. She'd grown confident over the past 2 years, no longer the timid sophomore who'd once been afraid to speak up in class. That's when she saw them. 3 juniors had cornered Alex Carter, a quiet sophomore with autism who carried his communication tablet everywhere. The bullies towered over Alex, who clutched his device protectively against his chest. "Give us the robot tablet, robot boy," sneered the ringleader. "Let's see what weird stuff you type on this thing." Maya felt her heart rate spike. She remembered sitting in this exact courtyard 2 years ago, listening to Tommy Harrison speak about finding courage in impossible moments. "Sometimes," Tommy had said, "being a hero just means being the person who doesn't walk away when someone needs help." Maya dropped her backpack and walked straight toward the confrontation. "Leave him alone," she said, her voice steady despite her racing pulse. The lead bully turned. "Mind your own business, senior." Maya moved to stand beside Alex, who looked up at her with grateful, surprised eyes. "This is my business. We all go to school here together." From across the courtyard, Tommy Harrison, now 17 and radiating quiet confidence, watched the scene unfold. He recognized the situation immediately. More importantly, he recognized the choice Maya was making. Tommy approached the group with calm authority. "Hey, Maya, Alex, is everything okay here?" The bullies recognized Tommy instantly. Everyone at Jefferson High knew his story by now. They also knew that messing with Tommy Harrison meant answering to an entire network of student protectors. "Just having a conversation," one mumbled awkwardly. "It looked like it was ending," Tommy said pleasantly. "Maya, want to walk Alex to class? I think he wanted to show me his new digital art project anyway." As the bullies dispersed, Maya helped Alex organize his scattered notebooks. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. Alex typed on his tablet and showed her the screen. "Thank you for seeing me as a person worth protecting." Tommy smiled, remembering his own words from years ago. "Maya, there's someone I'd like you to meet. Have you heard of the Ruby Williams Scholarship?" Later that afternoon, in Ruby's office at the school, 3 generations of courage sat together. Ruby, now the official community liaison coordinator, introduced Maya to Jasmine via video call from Stanford. "What you did today," Jasmine said from her dorm room. "That's exactly how change happens. One person refuses to walk away when someone needs help." Maya grinned. "I just remembered what you said in your assembly. Ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they choose courage over comfort." Alex, using his tablet, added, The best part is this gets to be my story to tell now, about the day someone stood up for me. Tommy held up his latest painting, Maya, Alex, and himself standing together under a rainbow, with the words, "Heroes come in all forms," painted across the bottom. Ruby watched 3 generations of kindness in her office and smiled. This isn't just about any of us anymore. It's about everyone who chooses courage when it matters most. The tradition continued. One choice at a time, one hero at a time, proving that Jasmine Williams had started something that would outlast them all. Jasmine Williams proved that you don't need superpowers to change everything. You just need the courage to act when someone needs help. In a world where it's easier to look away, she chose to step forward. When she had everything to lose, she risked it all for a stranger. Today, the Ruby Williams Scholarship Program has transformed over 300 students across 22 schools. Tommy Harrison continues teaching thousands that differences make us stronger. Derek Collins now runs anti-bullying programs at 3 high schools. And Jasmine? She's graduating from Stanford next year, planning to become the teacher who sees potential in every student. Their story reminds us that kindness creates miracles, courage is contagious, and sometimes the smallest act of compassion changes everything. What will your moment look like? When you see someone who needs help, will you be the person who steps forward? Will you be the voice that says, "That's not okay"? Because the world needs more Jasmines. The world needs more of you. If this story inspired you to believe in everyday heroes, smash that like button, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Black Tales Stories for more stories proving ordinary people create extraordinary change. Your moment of courage could be just one choice away.